Thank you to everybody for joining us this morning. I know it's an early one, and I know we've got a few accountants on the call as well, so I appreciate it's month end, so we do appreciate your time. In way of introduction, my name is Chris Flanagan. I am Managing Director at iMultiply. I think from looking at the attendee list that most of you know who we are, but for those who don't, iMultiply, we're a specialist accountancy and finance recruitment consultancy with offices in Edinburgh and Glasgow. We are a team currently of 14 people with over 80 years collective experience in recruitment. And next year, our business will be 10 years old. We're committed to being good corporate citizens, and we have taken the first steps on our sustainability journey by signing up to the Scottish Business Pledge. Part of iMultiply's founding DNA is playing an active part in our local business ecosystem, and events like today play an important part in that. Although not directly related to recruitment, we aim to provide insightful and useful information and advice to our customers. And today's webinar is on becoming a more sustainable and purpose-led business through B Corp certification. As we know, environment, social and corporate governance, or ESG as it's widely known, is increasingly high on the business agenda. And this has only increased further with COP26 conference in Glasgow later this month, which will focus the world's attention on Scotland and the world's leaders to see what commitments will be made to save the planet. In addition, the proposed Better Business Act is gathering momentum and support. If passed, it will change the Companies Act to ensure every company in the UK, regardless of size, aligns their interests to the shareholders with those of wider society and the environment. So one thing is very clear is that we all need to take action. One way to focus and improve the social environmental impact is to become a B Corp organisation. As more businesses focus on their sustainability, there's been a growing increase in the number of UK companies seeking B Corp certification. But what is B Corp and how can you become one? Well, who better placed to chat to us about this than Caroline Harridence? Caroline is an experienced finance professional with over 25 years, is a member of ICAEW and ACCA. Having trained with PwC, she now runs her own advisory firm, which provides portfolio FD services and works with businesses across many industry sectors. She is also very experienced in accounting systems and is the cloud champion for ICAEW in her region, editor of the Digital Accountancy magazine, and board advisor for the Digital Accountancy Show. As well as acting as a finance director for her clients, she is also very active in supporting businesses improve their social and environmental impact and sustainability. Having taken her own company through the B Corp certification process, Caroline has gone on to train as a B leader and now supports other businesses achieve their B Corp status and supports them once they're certified. She also works with businesses to develop and achieve their social and environmental goals. During Caroline's talk this morning, we invite you to put any questions that you may have into the chat function. And at the end of the session, we will aim to put as many of these to Caroline as time allows. Caroline, thank you so much for your time this morning and for sharing your insight with us. I'm sure it'll be a great session. So without further ado, over to you.
Great. Thank you, Chris, and thank you everyone for joining me this morning. I will just share my screen. Okay, there we go. So yeah, thank you for everyone for coming. And this morning, we're going to look an overview of the B Corp certification, what it is, a little bit of background on B Corp, and a little bit of background on actually the process of becoming B certified and actually what it means going forward into the future. So what is a B Corp organization and what does B Corp mean? So B Corps meet the highest standards of social and environmental performance. Basically, they're aiming to balance profit and purpose and to make a positive impact and to be a better and more responsible business. So they legally have to look at the wider stakeholder group and not just consider the shareholders, and they must measure the impact that they have on their workers, their customers, the community, and the environment. So it's really key is that they don't just look at shareholders, they're actually considering that wider group. As a bit of background on B Corp, It was actually established in America back in 2006. And at the moment, there's still the most B Corp businesses are in America, but it is spreading, and the UK is second now to America. If you look worldwide, there's around about 4,000 B Corps, and the number is growing. Over the last year, they've had a huge number of applications to become B Corp certified companies, and they're working through that now. So we will see these numbers increasing in the future. And if you actually look across the B Corps, they're in over 150 industries and over 75 countries. At the moment, well, there are 577 B Corps in the UK. Like I say, that's now up at over 580, and that number is increasing. And in March alone, they had, I think, around about 1,000 applications worldwide for companies to become B Corps. So we will see that number increasing. And basically, it's going up as B Corp recruit more people to take you through that certification verification process. So if you actually look at B Corps, who are B Corp companies? Like I say, there's a lot of them, over 4,000. So this is just an example of some of the ones that you may recognize. So we've got Innocent Drinks on there, Cook, and we've also got Tridos, but more recently, Coutts Bank, they have just become B Corp certified, as is Jamie Oliver. Subscription boxes, Gusto and HelloFresh, The Body Shop as well. So there's quite a lot of names on there. And if you look at the combined revenue over all the B Corp companies, we're over at $80 billion at the moment. And I think we're now up to 80 countries. So what makes B Corps unique? Well, the process that you go through, which I will talk about in a few minutes, is called the Impact Assessment, which is a comprehensive tool which has basically got a series of questions which will be tailored uniquely to you. I will talk about that later as well. And the nice thing, and one of the reasons I looked at B Corp, was there's a lot of the certifications and other things out there that focus very heavily on the environment, whereas B Corp actually looks at the whole company. So it's a very holistic view, and something that really attracted me to it. There is another part of it called Mission Lock, where B Corps are legally required to consider the impact of their decisions on all of their stakeholders. And that actually will involve changing the articles of association, but I will again explain that more fully. And the other thing about being unique is that it's very much a global movement and a very inclusive and supportive community. Even when you're going through certification, B Corps they bend over backwards to make you feel welcome and help you and things, and it's a great community. But what are the benefits of becoming a B Corp? I've actually was speaking to an FD of a B Corp last week, and one of the things that he really emphasized were the benefits, and one was attracting top talent. So having that B Corp certification is really helping new employees join businesses. They're finding now that when doing recruitment, the people who are applying for the jobs are really considering the purpose and the value of the business that they're working for. And B Corp shows that they've actually gone through that certification route and they will consider the workers. They've also seen, once they've attracted these people, that they're actually an improvement in team performance, team engagement, and actually retention as well. There's definitely an increase in consumer interest, and that's been evidenced really by Boots and Waitrose, where they've actually got these online B Corp aisles, which are just sourcing B Corp products. And now actually, if you go around Tesco's and things as well, you'll see more B Corp products there, and more people are recognizing that label. And actually, B Corp did some research back in 2018, and they showed that B Corps grew 28 times faster than UK GDP over a 12-month period. So it's proved really that having that status can actually add to the bottom line. Attracting investors, and this is definitely something that's on the up. And I was talking last week as well to a corporate finance boutique, and they're saying that not only now are investors really interested in sort of ESG credentials, some are now actively coming in and seeking out B Corp businesses, and they're finding that there's been a huge growth in investment in that basis. Another thing about becoming a B Corp is it's a good way to set improvement targets, because as you go through that assessment, you can see where you are today, and you can set targets on how to improve from that starting point. And it's also a really good way of benchmarking yourself against others, because everybody's B Corp score in each of the areas is available in the B Corp directory. So you can see what other competition's doing or like similar businesses. Build credibility, that is definitely something we're also seeing, that B Corp certification. People know that you've actually been through a process and an audit, and they know that that is a credible certification that you've achieved. And lastly, as I touched on before, you join a growing community worldwide of really supported businesses, all with a similar ethos as well. But this is really what the B Corp community have said themselves. 99% recommend becoming B Corps. 71% have said that candidates are attracted to them because they have got that B Corp status. 64% believe that being B Corp is likely contributing to financial growth and will do in the future. As part of the process, you really do have to look at your policies and practices and procedures. And as a result, over 85% have implemented new policies and practices. And you definitely improve your knowledge of sustainability and what you're doing in the business. And not only what you're doing in the business, but I found actually by what I'm doing at home as well, it's really been influenced by going through this certification. And then this is a quote I really like from Douglas Lamont, who is CEO of Innocent, which is a B Corp business. And he said, becoming a B Corp is much, much more than certification. We're adding momentum to an important movement, and one that wants to shift the image of business from greed to good. So, as Chris mentioned, I wanted just to basically touch on the Better Business Act, because this is a campaign which is gathering momentum at the moment. And the importance of business sustainability is definitely increasing, and it's becoming highly likely that ESG reporting is going to be mandatory for all UK companies in the future. At the moment, it's quite new, and there's a real focus on the large companies and not the small companies, and also quite a strong focus on just the environmental part. So as a result of this, the Better Business Act is a campaign which aims to amend Section 172 of the Companies Act and really transform how a business is conducted. It's a business-led campaign, and it started back in April this year. I was there at the start of the campaign, and at that time there were about 200 businesses backing it. I just checked yesterday, and now there are over 750 businesses, and they're businesses of all sizes, including John Lewis, Waitrose, Innocent, Institute of Directors. They're all supporting this. And the Better Business Act aims to change UK legislation so that all directors of all UK companies, regardless of their size, have a legal obligation to operate in a way that benefits all stakeholders. And that will include employees, communities, customers, and the environment. And at the same time, they still will be seeking to deliver profits to their shareholders. So they're going to have to report on how they balance people, the planet, and the profit, and show this in a financial report, strategic report, or impact report. And it really is a unique opportunity for the UK to demonstrate leadership on the global stage and really believe to develop a competitive advantage and also align with the government's ambition to build back better. So last week, we saw the Labour Party conference, and now we're at the Conservative Party conference, and there are representatives from the Better Business Act who have meetings with MPs at this time. And at the moment, we're still relatively early in the campaign. So if it does go through, and it is, as I say, gathering momentum and looking more likely to go through, when it actually does go through, I don't know, but it's certainly something to look out for in the future. So I've talked about B Corp certification, but now I'll explain the process in a little more detail. And first of all, which companies can become B Corp certified? Well, first of all, you have to be a for-profit company. So it excludes things like charities, local councils. It also excludes sole traders and partnerships, but you can be a limited company, CIC, etc. But the aim is you have to be with a for-profit business. You can be any size of business and in any country. And when you go in and start the process, you have to put in how big you are, where you work, number of employees, and what you do. And from that, then it will pick questions for you. So these questions will then be unique to you. There's a huge database. And based on this track, this gives you the questions. Another key thing to notice here as well, that you have to be over 1 year in operation to become a fully certified B Corp. If you are less than a year old, you can become what's called B Corp pending, and you will see that B Corp logo, and then underneath in big letters it will say pending. And what that means is that you are a company with less than 12 months of operations. But what that means is you do still go through the assessment and you still do have to answer the questions, but you don't go through this rigorous audit at the end. And what you are saying is that by the time you come up for certification, which is within 12 months, you will have these processes in place. So it's a shorter route to certification, but you don't get that full benefit of certification, and you have to then go on and certify 12 months later. So with the actual process, you have to complete the questions, and then you hit submit, and then you go into the queue for verification, which is really like quite an in-depth audit. And then once you've got through that, and if you pass that, you will then join the community. It's worth noting that it is intentionally tough, and they say around about out of every 3 companies that start the certification route, actually, and 1 will go through to actually become a B Corp business. And then once you join the community, you have to pay a fee, an annual fee, which is based on the turnover of the business and on a sliding scale. And then every 3 years, you go on and recertify. And in that intervening period, every year, you produce what's called an annual impact report, which is showing how you were doing, what targets you set, and how you're performing against these targets. And if you look on places like Jamie Oliver's website or Ella's Kitchen, etc., these impact reports are available for people to see, and that's part of the certification is you have to have this available and post it on your website. So becoming a B Corp, there are sort of 2 main parts to it. First of all is the completing the assessment. As I've said, when you put in the credentials of your business, you will get questions which are unique to you out of this database. And there's roughly about 200 questions in all, covering different areas, which I'll talk about in a couple of minutes. I don't ever like to call it a point scoring exercise, but as you work through the questions, you do score points, and you have to have at least 80 points in order to submit your application. The other key part of becoming a B Corp business is that you have to make the legal change, which is where you are going to amend your articles of association to say that you're looking at the wider stakeholder group and not just considering the shareholders. Then when you've gone through verification and paid your fees, you then also have 1 further document to sign, which is a B Corp agreement, which includes what's called the Declaration of Interdependence, which says that you're a purpose-driven business that considers the stakeholders, and also that you're seeking to change the world and make the world a better place. So I've mentioned the legal change, but actually, what does it mean? So demystifying the legal change, which is a commitment to the triple bottom line. So your shareholders should be willing to make the legal changes required of becoming a B Corp business. And in the UK, that means changing your articles of association to reflect that your operations have a material positive impact on society and the environment. Now, as part of this, B Corp do have recommended wording, which they have agreed and can be, if anybody wants to see a copy of that, just get in contact because I can send that to you. And the wording says that B Corp certification, that they're requiring all companies to align their legal structures with the mission of their company. And by adopting the B Corp legal standards, your company will bake the values of their company into its legal DNA. It's also obtaining legal protection and permission to consider non-financial stakeholders in decision making, but it's also protecting the mission, including through changes in management structure or ownership in the future. And it's where you're going to consider, it's really key is where, again, you're considering these wider stakeholder group, including your shareholders, employees, suppliers, society, and the environment. One thing I would say is that it is worth businesses looking at the legal change early in proceedings if they have investors or are going through the period of investment, because you have to get them, make them aware of it and make sure that they're happy with it. But if you go onto Companies House, you'll see B Corps have gone in and changed their articles of association. So what is the B impact assessment? So the B impact assessment, or BIA, is that series of questions that you have to work through. And as I've mentioned, that they are quite unique to you. However, they do all go through these similar 5 areas, which is this holistic whole overview of the business. So there's a governance section. I will talk about all these more in just a minute, but the governance section, so it's looking how the company is made up, who the owners are, what information they put out, what their mission is, etc. The workers, that's looking at how the company's working policies are, also looking at pay, etc., education, career development. The community, that's looking at things like your donations that you give, that you're giving back to the community, what suppliers you use, have you got a focus on local, have you involved in any groups? The environment, that's looking at your inputs and outputs, and then your customers, that's looking how you are delivering the best service to your customers, looking at things like GDPR, do you get feedback, have you got any warranties, etc. So just touching on these 5 areas in a little bit more detail. So it covers the governance. So that's the processes you have in place to support your mission and values. So the questions will look at things like your mission statement, your ethics, also what metrics you've got available, the structure of the business, diversity, etc., who's on the board, who are the owners of the business, and also how you engage with your stakeholders. And then the workers, it's how you look after the people who work for you. It's worth pointing out at this minute, if you're a very small business and you, for example, you don't have any workers, so it's just you running the business on your own, you can have a no worker B Corp track. So what it does is it takes the points and it will then spread them evenly over the 4 areas that you do complete. So you're not actually penalized from having no workers working for you. So like I say, the workers are looking at things like how much you pay them. Are you paying them, national wage or living wage? How you look after them? Ownership. Have you got an employee ownership share scheme? And also the policies and procedures that you've got in the business. Then with the community, it's looking at how you look after the community and what you're giving back. So things like pro bono, volunteer hours, CSR days, donations, what charities, if you are giving money back to charities, creating jobs, and also looking very focused on the diversity, equity and inclusion. Then with the environment, it's basically the impact that you have on the environment and what you're doing to try and reduce that. So you're looking at your inputs, your outputs, your carbon footprint, also water, waste, education, etc. And you then input all that, and then you can obviously set targets to improve that in the future. And then lastly, the final area that it looks at are your customers and what processes you have got in place in order to ensure that you're giving the best service possible. So like I say, it covers things like customer feedback. Do you have feedback forms? Do you provide guarantees? Things like GDPR, how you're protecting the data, and also any certifications that you have. So I've talked about the BIA. What does it look like? Well, it's an online tool, and one thing to point out at the moment is it's a freely available tool. So even if you don't want to go forward with B Corp assessment, you can set up this tool and use it free to use. And many businesses do this. For example, say they know that they've got to focus on a specific areas like workers, and they want a good starting point of what they could be doing. They can go in and just use that part of the tool and never go on to certify. So it's a freely available tool. So if you look at it, this is actually the screen once you've gone in and once you've actually set it up. It shows you these 5 areas that I've mentioned: governance, workers, community, environment, and customers. It's also showing you a final 6th area, which is everybody gets, regardless of the type of business that you are. And these are called disclosure questions. This is a list of yes/no questions about the areas that you might work in, for example, gambling, and how you operate in these areas. And although these businesses in these areas won't necessarily be excluded from being B Corps, it's just something to disclose, and during verification you might be asked for additional information on these areas. So when you enter the information about your company, size, location, and employees, this generates the business impact assessment. And all these questions are then generated. And behind each of these 5 areas are a series of questions. And this screen is letting you see how far on you are in the process. So we can see we've still got 101 questions unanswered, and we've got 45 points so far. And the green and different colored bars at the bottom are showing you how far through you are in each area. So it really helps you monitor it as you're going through it. And then down the left-hand side, you can see that there are various dashboards and reports that you can run. You can set goals, you can bookmark questions and things. And it also lets you see where you're high and low in certain areas and where you may need help. So rather than giving a live demo, because I was worried that the internet might let me down, I've taken some screenshots of inside the B impact assessment. So this is a screenshot of the community section. So if you click through, this is what you would see. And this is a list of questions which has come up for this particular business. And here we're looking at just a sample of some of the questions that could be there. So in this example, for example, we're looking at, what are you doing locally? Who are your suppliers? Who you bank with? Volunteering that you do. And as you go through this, you'll answer the questions and you'll get different points for how you answer them. But one key thing to note is that once you've hit submit, you then go into this verification queue, which is like this audit. So what you have to do is make sure that you have got evidence to support the answers that you give. And you have to keep this evidence up to date so that when you actually go through this verification, you can produce, like, for example, here's an example of how I ensure that I'm working, my number of pro bono hours. I keep a pro bono log, and each time I'm doing something on a pro bono basis, I add it to that log. I've got a database of supplier questionnaires that I use, etc. And I'm always keeping that evidence up to date, because when you go through recertification, you'll need to produce that again. So it's really critical that you have that evidence. And I would certainly advise that you pick it up as you go through it and keep it up to date in the future. Also, as I've mentioned before, this is a really good way to set targets. So you might then, have targets in here that you want to do something in the future. This is then bookmarked, but when you start implementing it, make sure you've got evidence that you're doing it. Then I'll show you, this is just an example of one of the questions. So in this case, this is a governance question and looking how the company is made up. And as you can see, there's total points earned as you go through it, and different ticks will get different points. But in this particular case, we've gathered the most points that we can. One thing I will say is that it's not, if you go through it, you're not going through it to try and get 100%. And it's really a journey. People won't be scoring 100% on all the areas, and you might find you're strong in some areas and weak in the other. But this will help you set goals in the future, and also you might discover specific areas where you want to concentrate. I also like to say it's not really, I never like to look at this as a filling in the BIA exercise. because once you're submitted your BIA, you should really be going back and looking at it on a regular basis and keeping it up to date, ideally monthly or quarterly, because then when it comes to recertification, you have all that evidence and you have everything in place, which will really help you in the future, and also really helps you with your impact report in the middle. Like I say, this is just really a really quick view of what the BIA looks like and one of the examples. And if you do want me to take you through the governance section or show you this in some more detail, then please get in touch with me or Chris, and I can help definitely arrange that for you and take you through it. But I think Chris mentioned at the beginning of this that one of the things that I did go on and do is become a B-leader. So for me, I got involved in sustainability and environment and things when I lived overseas, and I had a little bit more time. I went overseas with a very young family and didn't do lots of work to begin with until they got into kindy and things. And I did quite a lot of courses and things in the environment and things. And when I came back, I knew I wanted to do B Corp for my business, but I hadn't actually anticipated on actually, getting into it and enjoying it and being part of the community and really loving it as much as I did. So I really wanted to help other businesses go through that process. So I applied to become a B-leader, which means that you're basically trained by B Lab, which is part of B Corp, in order to support other businesses who are going through the B Corp certification. It's key to note that things that when you're going through the process, there are a number of pitfalls. And unfortunately, you do come across businesses who have set up their initial track wrong. They then hit submit, and then they go through into certification only to find that they've answered the wrong set of questions. So they have to go back to the beginning. And as I've mentioned, at the moment, there is a huge queue. There's a lot of businesses have hit submit. So B Corp are recruiting really rapidly to try and get this certification queue down. But I am just going through my final stages of verification now, and I submitted back in March. So it really, you have to get that track right. You don't want to find out after the end of sort of 7 months that you've answered the wrong questions. So one of the things by training somebody to be a B-leader is that you become much more aware of the actual process and the pitfalls, what questions you should be having, etc. And we can actually change the track if you're on the wrong track for you. And also it helps as well because it is a lengthy process, because you should be gathering the evidence as you go through it. So by having a B-leader, they can help you with the actual putting time in your diary, telling you what you've got to do in between, etc., and help with the overall education as well. So they can support you all through certification. They're able to join you on the verification call if you want. They can help you, support you with gathering the evidence, etc. But the other part of becoming a B Corp business is that once certified, you can actually then have to have that support. I think it's really important to keep going, keep building that evidence, but also you have to produce this annual impact report and set yourself goals, see how you're performing against these goals. So a B-leader can help you here. They can also help you in lots of different ways, and there are lots of B-leaders all over the country. And you can help you keep your evidence up to date, communicate it with the business, and help you on any specific areas where you may need help. One thing also to add just at this point as well is, as I've mentioned, that there has been a great long queue and a huge increase in the number of people applying. So B Lab, as I say, they've recruited quite a lot of new auditors, and also they've also created now a new sort of channel, so a new track, which is called the micro track. Now this is going to still complete the BIA, you still have to go through verification, but that process is slightly quicker, and they're hoping that this will bring that certification for small businesses who have got up to 10 employees and up to $1 million in turnover. They're hoping that certification process will drop to between 1 and 3 months in the future once they've got this backlog down. So they really are taking steps in order to try and really speed this up, and they're hoping that in time they'll get everything down to sort of a 1 to 3 month period. So if you are a micro, small business, that's really worth noting that you actually can get through it a lot quicker. And then hopefully in time, the other ones will follow. You've probably heard enough from me at the moment, but if you do want to hear any more about the B Corp process or anything, or if you want me to show you the BIA, then please either get in contact with me or get in touch with Chris, and I would be more than happy to help you in that area. And now I will hand it back to Chris.
Lovely. Oh, thank you, Caroline. That was really, really informative. We've got a few questions that have come in, if you don't mind, that I'd just like to put to you. John has put a comment in the Q&A, which is, I guess, around the expense that an SME might incur in going through the process. There's a lot of significant changes to legals and to shareholders and regulators, etc. And not for the will of not wanting to do it, but just the costs involved for some SMEs could be prohibitive. Is there any indication of what that is? And also there's another question around timelines. So there's a 9-month wait at the minute, roughly. What's the timescales from starting that first assessment right through to potentially becoming certified?
Okay. Well, on the cost side of it, obviously you've got the time element, so you're putting your time into it. But when you hit submit, you have a £250 submission fee to pay. And then, like I say, when you actually go on and certify, you then have an annual fee, which is then based on the turnover of your business. So if your SME, hopefully falling into the, well, potentially falling into the sort of 0 to 150,000, for example, that's £1,000 a year certification, and then it goes up in increments after that, up to the very large scale. So you're starting around about £1,000. Regarding the legal change, it really depends on the makeup of the business and how complicated you are. B Corp have got suggested wording, which has been backed up and supported, and they've gone through the process with a legal firm called Bates Wells. And they've got recommended wording. So it might be that you just have to show that to the lawyers are happy with it, and then you can implement it. Some, obviously, if you've got a lot of investors, it could get a little bit more complicated. But the suggested wording, if you're able to go with that, the legal costs shouldn't be too much. So for example, it's just me here, so I just checked it all and it was all fine and submitted it that way. But if you do want to see the wording, I'm more than happy to send that out. From a time wise, I hate the answer when I say it depends, but it does depend. So it really depends on the structure of the business and how complicated you are. The key thing is to have the time in your diary and keep the momentum going, because there's nothing worse than leaving it and coming back. And I know that because I've done it. They're leaving it and coming back and forgetting where you are. So it's sort of saying, having the time. And if you're a big company, I think it's really good to have, almost treat it like a little project really, and have that sort of team of people who can all go off and take bits, and then you regularly have the times in the diary and they're going and looking at specific areas. And like I say, the key thing is so many businesses sort of get really, I'm not so strong in this area, I need to get stronger in that area, but they're really strong in other areas. You're not aiming for 100%. So it's working through it and identifying where the problem areas are, if there are any, and then just sort of making sure you've got that team, got that time in the diary, and breaking it down into pieces and doing it one piece at a time. I think it's key.
And the 5 areas of that are tracked, so the governance, workers, community, environment, customers, are each one of those equally weighted? I know you say it's not really a point scoring, but again, you're trying to get points. Are those all equally weighted?
No, I think there are different sections. Again, it depends on the structure of the business and what information you put in at the beginning, but it's all sort of spread out, but not equally. But for example, I don't employ people to work for me, so I just use contractors when I need help. So I had the 0 workers track, and my questions just went to the other areas, and it was redistributed. So I had a lot more questions in specific areas, so there was a heavier weighting on some areas than the others. The other thing that's worth noting as well is that the questions change every 3 years. So where next change is going to come through in January. one thing I will add as well is there is a window. So if you're already gone through a lot of it, you don't suddenly have to start all over again. They do have that window where you can still use the old pack of questions. But one thing we are anticipating is that over the last sort of 18 months, there's been a lot more people working from home. So when it comes to the workers and also when it comes to the environment, it's anticipated that there will be more sort of in there around about the working from home. They have given us out some guidelines, for example, how you might want to look at the greenhouse gases for home employees, and that's all been given to us already, but we're expecting that the workers track will probably expand in that area. And the other potential area that might expand in the future is actually the SMEs, because we're seeing, I think to begin with, there was a big focus on the larger companies, you know, your Ben and Jerry's and things like that. But now we're beginning to see it going through the supply chain. So, you know, people are asking what the businesses in the supply chain are doing. And now there's a lot more SMEs who are actually now looking at becoming B Corp. And when I did my B Corp, and this is the way I do actually with some of my businesses, I just do little cohorts. So for SMEs and take them through the certification together. And that's really good because you learn off one another, and it's sort of, it's nice that, but actually when you become certified or you join the community, it doesn't matter if you're an SME or a huge company, everybody's really welcoming and helpful. And also another thing that I didn't add was once you do become certified, there are local groups, which is called B Local. So you've got a B Local Scotland. You can then join B Local Scotland, and they run events and they support one another. They're going to COP26, all these sorts of things. So there is that sort of local community as well. So you have got the global, but you've also got the local.
Excellent. Craig's asked, aside from the visible use of obviously the accreditation logo, what would Caroline say the practical benefits on a day-to-day basis for a B Corp certified company?
Well, from a practical point of view, it's just lots really. It depends really what areas you're focusing on. I see a lot of companies where I'm taking them through it. They're really focused on the workers and their policies. So, you know, they're going in, they're changing all that, and you're really getting improved worker retention and also involvement. You know, things are a lot more transparent. So from a day-to-day point of view, that's definitely come in. Also, you find things that they're doing great initiatives around the environment, what they're actually, how they're, you know, recycling, putting in schemes like this. So you're actually seeing the practical day-to-day things just sort of becoming part of the way they do work. So they've really sort of benefited from that, and definitely, you know, attracting investors and things like that. So this is all just part of it. But from a practical day-to-day point of view, the way you run the business, I would be surprised. I mean, I know that I'm a small business. It's really made me think about some things I've been doing, but not only in the business, also at home. It just filters into your day-to-day life, and, you know, the way you treat waste, the way you do your heating, all these sorts of things. It's all just really changes, and it makes you think. I mean, I work from home, so we've now got solar panels and all these sorts of things, thinking about the cars you're buying. Like I say, it's just everything. It's that's one thing I really liked about it. It sort of brings it into the home, and your children are picking up on it, and they're hopefully will then take that into the future, because at the end of the day, the reason I got involved with the environment was to make the planet a better place for the children. So actually to see them, they know about food waste, they take their waste home from school because there's not a bin there and things like that. It's just, and they did it by themselves. You know, it's not me. My husband does joke and call me a tree-loving hippie, but it's not like that at all. It's just the way that you are. And that's something I really like. So it's one of the things about B Corp is it's really practical. So you can really build it into how you do business.
And we've got some business owners on the call, and we've got some people that advise business owners on the call. What, you know, challenges that a business owner might face looking to become B Corp certified, you know, the traps and what you've witnessed helping other businesses through it. What are those?
Well, I have to say that one of the biggest bear traps is really breaking it down into bite-sized chunks and putting that time in the diary, keeping that momentum going, because otherwise going back and forth into it. Because the other thing although it's not asking you for loads of financial information, it bases it on financial years. And if you go on too long, you're going to have to start all over again, because you're going to have gone into a new financial year. So it's keeping that momentum going. It's also keeping that evidence, build that evidence as you go. You don't want to be going back and, you know, not have that evidence in place when you get to verification, because whilst, yeah, there's sort of a 7 or 8 month, or there has been a 7 or 8 month waiting list, you know, now they're hoping, like, for example, the small SMEs get down to 1 to 3 months. You haven't got that time to be gathering everything at the last minute. But one key thing definitely is to look at that legal change early, just in case the investors want more help, or you need more help from the lawyers, and consider the timing. You know, some businesses are going through a fundraising, so they can't make that legal change at the moment because they're going to have to wait until that's finished. So, you know, breaking it down, putting the time in your diary, and then just looking at your specific situation and getting those investors and making that legal change early. If you are a larger business, you can make that legal change later in the proceedings, but if they do get that 1 to 3 month window, you know, you're not going to have very long. And companies' house take a while to get things processed and things as well.
Mm-hmm. And one final question that's come in is, what's the, you know, sort of one key piece of advice for any business owners looking to start out on their own sustainability journey?
I would start by looking at the purpose. You know, what is your purpose? What is your business looking to do? And then actually think about what your purpose is, what your why is, and then really think about why you want to do it and what you want to get out of it. And then, like I say, focus on breaking it down into bite-sized chunks, and don't consider you've got to hit 100%, because you're not. It's a journey. And even if you go through it and you never hit certify, you're going to benefit from doing it, because you really make you look at your business and how you're conducting it. But definitely start with your purpose, start with your why.
Fantastic. Caroline, thank you so much for your time this morning. You know, it's been really insightful, really useful to get more details on the B Corp process. You know, sustainability is so high on the business agenda at the minute. I think this is just another conversation of many that are happening at the minute. So thank you. To anybody on the call, please do get in contact with Caroline if you're interested in finding out more about B Corp Certification. Caroline supports businesses through certification on one-to-one, and as she mentioned, smaller cohorts for sort of smaller SMEs to become accredited. Caroline also works with businesses who want to measure their impact and make measurable and sustainable improvements in their companies, as well as supporting clients as a finance director. So if any of those services are of interest, please reach out to Caroline directly, or you can reach out to us at iMultiply, and we'll put you in contact with Caroline going forward. And just again, thank you to everybody for taking the time to attend this morning. Hope it's a good, useful start to a Tuesday morning, and, you know, good luck with the rest of the week, everybody. Thanks again.
Thank you.